Hello and welcome to Labour Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week edition of the program, the oil and gas workers released a communique which recommends several solutions to some of the challenges the oil and gas sector is faced with. We also have news stories for you. We will be right back. The Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC) is taking another step towards ensuring that workers across Nigeria benefit from the 2024 National Minimum Wage Act. The two-day workshop with the theme Strategies for Effective Implementation of the National Minimum Wage Act brings union members and employers together to discuss tools and information needed to enforce the new wage structure.
The effort of the national to get a new minimum wage will amount to nothing if people who will be directly involved in the implementation at the state level are not equipped with the necessary knowledge, information, and experiences. And so that's why we are supporting this activity. We want to thank the leadership for thinking about this.
President of NLC Joe Ajero stressed that the union's role does not end with negotiation for the minimum wage, but extends to ensuring its full implementation.
Even when you cage labor, I would say we are not doing anything. Any day people come out from their house, they don't have food to eat. They will say, today we are going out, if we die, we die. That is not what this country needs. There should be people who will be interfacing between the common man, as you rightly pointed out, and the state, who will tell them how people are feeling, who will tell them the impact of certain policies, to the people. And the way Naira is going down now, I'm not sure any Nigerian is happy over it.
We are waiting for the template for the consequential adjustment table. And some of the states will still have work to do, because we have seen some of the state governments that are already, complaining that they might not be able to meet up with 70,000, some of the private sector. But it has now become a law in the country that any employer of labor, either the state, the federal, or the private sector, if you are not paying, you risk going to jail. Because if you are not paying, that means you are against the law of the country.
The workshop aims to outline strategies that will ensure that employers in the public and private sector comply with the Act.
The National President of the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria, ASCSN, Comrade Shehu Mohammed, says the payment implementation of the new minimum wage will commence before the end of the year. Comrade Mohammed made this known in an interaction with journalists in Lagos. According to him, certain percentages have been agreed by relevant stakeholders in the finance sector under the committee. ASCSN President pointed out that the 70,000 Naira minimum wage is not even substantial for workers considering the present state of the nation's economy, whilst insisting that no governor or state lacks the capacity to pay the agreed figure and that there is no way such excuse can be tenable.
70,000 Naira will not do anything. But looking at the fact that we're transiting from 30,000 to 70,000, when you look at the percentage, it's more than 100% increase. So it's something that, yes, we can appreciate, but the agitation we have of living wage, which is 250,000 Naira, even at that, we are not too satisfied that the 250,000 Naira will be enough for an average worker to spend within a month, along with his family members and other dependents. But since the pronouncement, well, we say let's start from there. We know time will come, maybe before the end of the present administration, will achieve a living wage in the country. I remember vividly that Mr. President, during one of his campaign and interaction with labor leaders, he did mention of living wage as the best wage for Nigerian worker. So after the pronouncement of 70,000 Naira, what comes next? There is the need to have a consequential adjustment. This consequential adjustment has to do with who will benefit 70,000 Naira. and what will be the difference between the least paid worker and somebody who is ahead of him up to the last cadre in the civil service.
The Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASIN, has attributed the hike in petrol and scarcity of products to the floating of the naira. The senior oil workers made their position known at a press briefing in Lagos. At the briefing, President PENGASIN, Festus Osifo, released a communique following completion of the third edition of the Energy and Labour Summit of the Union. The communique highlighted solutions to various challenges facing the oil sector, which include crude oil theft, the need for amendment of the Petroleum Industrial Act, application of artificial intelligence in the oil and gas industry, the need for actualization of the Nigeria Gas Master Plan, among others.
From September, October last year, government was paying fuel subsidy. So if you are paying fuel subsidy, where will they go? How was the governors getting more money? It wasn't from subsidy. It was from devaluation. That is why you see FROIS declaring more naira. That they have made trillions of naira within a little time. That is why you are seeing customs telling us that they are making more money. It is because of devaluation and exchange rate. And where does this money go? Majority of this money goes into the federation account that they are going to share. In fact, that is why they have more naira to share. It is not because the proceeds from subsidy. That narrative, almost all the pressmen, whenever I listen to them, I said, no, let's do a little more digging. We shouldn't just take narrative from government and run away with it.
Obviously, after the summit, we all know that a lot of lectures were taken, and there were so many solutions, recommendations that were profiled, and become pertinent that PENGASIN has to make it known to the general public and stakeholders so that all those recommendations will be implemented, especially to all the companies that PENGASIN is cut across. So they will make it their daily, they will actually put in effort to make sure that everything recommended are all carried out so that we'll get a better operation.
Our last PENGASIN summit, a lot of issues has been discussed, critical stakeholders in the industry, and which we feel that it is very important that we should itemize these items and push it forward for public and government for policy making and effective management of oil and gas industry in Nigeria. Our expectation from what we have just done by letting this communique out to the public is to avail the government the opportunity to have informed decision, as in issues highlighted therein are critical issues which we believe strongly. If the government of the day will been able to take to some of these issues that we saw highlighted, I'm very sure we will have a successful oil and gas industry.
The purpose of that summit actually is to educate the public and our various stakeholders, especially critical stakeholders, because the oil and gas is our own farm. We don't have any other place, and our job is advocacy. That's the only tool we have. We don't have guns, we don't have anything. So the more we talk, the more we do, and then you need to educate even the people that make policies, because they might not have the other side. The other side of the story. So we spend a lot of money just for this advocacy, so that we can pass our message across constructively.
On the Profile Interview segments this week, I'll be speaking with Engineer Festus Osifo, who is the president of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association. It tells me that it's important for the federal government to check its economic policies to ensure that the hike in PMS is reduced. All right, it's good to have you on the program.
Thank you, Sharon.
And congratulations on a successful outing. It's the third in its series. And you came up with a document which indicates the communique of the event. Can you bring us up to speed on why you decided to make this document a public document?
Thank you so much, Sharon, and thank you for having me. You know, as trade unions, our function cut across, coming to the street and protesting and fighting every now and then. More so as a senior staff association in the oil and gas industry, we should be able to influence the policy direction of government. We should be able to influence the policies that are shaping or that will shape this industry in the future. So that is actually why after the summit, that caught, if you remember, the future of Nigeria oil and gas industry, we talked about energy mix, we talked about energy security, talked about artificial intelligence, crude oil theft and divestment. So all these subtopics, they are very powerful. They are the contemporary topics today in Nigeria oil and gas industry. So instead of us to keep complaining, to keep nagging and keep fighting, we felt that, okay, let us do some documentation on what we think the government should do in order to affect those policy areas, but where the issues are really, it's proffering solutions to those challenges. So beyond identification of the challenges, beyond the regular lamentation, we went further in the summit to profile solutions to the nagging problems that the industry currently faces. So that is actually why we needed to release the communique to the public. Then we have forwarded same to captains of industries. We have forwarded same to government, to policy makers in the industry, and also to all the players, including the IOCs, both in the upstream, the downstream, the midstream, the service companies, and the regulators. So this document as of today has been sent to all of them for them to digest. And we will also follow up to see to the implementation of some of all these.
During the conference, there was a robust discussion on energy mix, and there were several recommendations that the association shared. Can you tell us more about this vis-a-vis the issue of fuel scarcity and the hike in the price of fuel?
Okay, first, if you look at the document, the communique that we released, talking about the energy mix. Today, literally in Nigeria, we are much more dependent on fossil fuel, much more dependent on crude and oil and gas in Nigeria. Why gas has been identified as a transition fuel? Why gas is relatively greener than crude, but both of them are facing some financial challenges? Let government come up with a lot of policies, a lot of incentives to both the international and local oil and gas producers, so that we will ramp up our production, most especially in deep water, because in deep water there you don't have issues of oil theft. So if we are able to do a lot of taking of FIDs today in the final investment decisions in lot of projects in deep water based on the fiscal incentives that government is going to give, I can tell you that between now and the next 5 years, we could turn them around and increase our production. So what we are saying is that once that production has been increased, let's assume we are able to add 1 million barrels per day to our production today. Government should set aside the funds that is coming from 50% of it, which is 500,000 barrels. You set that fund aside, you now use that fund in developing other areas. Today, we don't really have much, a lot of development regarding solar. We don't have development regarding batteries and electricity. Different parts of the world now are looking at electricity power cars and all that. So we don't really have much of all that. And we don't even have the funds that we could commit to it. Because, as you know, we are literally surviving as a country. The real problem that we are facing today as a country is our exchange rate. If the regulation was done and the exchange rate was at $450 per barrel, then PMS today would have been selling for less than 400 naira per se, maybe between 320 to 380. So even with deregulation, that would have been the price of PMS. But today, it is not like that. The principal cardinal reason is the exchange rate. So our advocacy, if you remember, there was a communique, a press release that we did, a press conference that we did in TUC sometime early part of this year, where we clearly we rested it on the exchange rate. that is why the cost of literally everything today has gone haywire. If we can sufficiently address that, I can tell you that the price of PMS will come down. So what we have recommended as part of the push is that government should give a special exchange rate consideration to the managers of the downstream sector of the oil and gas industry. You are selling crude to Dangote, and you are saying that that crude that you are giving to Dangote will price in naira. So what we have asked is that at what exchange rate? So if you now say, okay, I'm going to give you this crude at let's say $80 per barrel, but with an exchange rate of 1,000, which will now bring it to 80,000 naira per barrel, it will be much more better. But if you use an exchange rate of 1,600, by the time you multiply by 80, that is going to give you somewhere around 128 naira per barrel as against the 80 naira. So once that input cost is high, then the final price that Dangote is going to sell will also be high. So we are having that conversation, and we are trying to make them understand that that is the best direction that we could go. Because with that, you will be subsidizing production, not consumption. Because you are subsidizing production from Dangote, you are not literally subsidizing consumption.
Moving on, the Nigerian gas master plan is very much there and available. I don't know if you'd like to say one or two things. And we can also talk about the issue of crude oil theft. I'm very much aware of Pengason's advocacy towards the end or ending crude oil theft. But despite the advocacy and the walks and protests, it still persists. This document that you've made public, would you want to share what your recommendations are to the government and relevant stakeholders? Okay,
quickly, let me tell you the gas master plan. I'll come to the crude oil theft. So in the gas master plan, yes, today, you know, we've been having discussions on the AKK project, on the Ajakuta Kaduna Kanu project. We'll be having discussions regarding the OB3 and all that. But Nigerians are not truly interested in a lot of those acronyms and a lot of those talkism. What we are fully interested in is how will this affect my pocket? That is what Nigerians are interested in. And that is why we have been advocating. And also the summit, we recognize the fact that we need to deepen those gas infrastructures across the nook and crannies of Nigeria. The infrastructures will be developed in such a way that as you buy PMS today across different parts of Nigeria, you will also be able to buy CNG. Because if properly developed, we could get CNG at 20% of the cost that we are getting PMS today, not even lower. So that is why we have been doing that advocacy, because the price of PMS today is truly better in Nigerians. But when, just imagine that you are saving 80% of the cost of fueling your vehicle, you know, it's going to give you relief. It's going to give you income to be spent in other areas. In fact, the opportunity cost is enormous. So that is why we have been advocating that the issue of deepening the infrastructure of the CNG is cardinal and it's key. And we want government to go in that direction, so that the man in Damaturu, so that the person in Meduguri, somebody in Potiskum will be able to drive into stations, CNG stations, and refuel or powered up his car. So that is what we have been advocating for. They're coming to crude oil theft quickly. Yeah, this has been a menace. If you remember, if you look at that communique, we made reference to 2022 when we started that advocacy. In 2022, Sharon, you remember that our production was sub 700,000 barrels production per day. So we mastered the advocacy, we mastered the rostrum, we did a lot of suggestions. You know, I tell people that for every time you see us in the street, for one time we'll come to the street, we are having hundreds of meetings behind the scene that press men are not even there, because that is where you profile solutions. The street is to draw attention. So after drawing attention while you march on the streets, you will now go behind and have real-time conversations on what could be done. So we suggested to them some of these things that we think they could do. And they've done quite a few. Sharon, you remember very well that in the PIA, that there is a provision in the PIA that says that 3% of the previous of the operating expenditure of the previous year budget of the oil and gas producers should be set aside for host community fund. and that would not take over from the former CSRO, corporate social responsibilities, that most of these companies used to do. But it's shocking that today a lot of those companies, they have not started doing it. They have not complied, and we have had several meetings with the regulators trying to make them understand the need for that to be done, and also to set up the trustees that will manage that fund, so that when those host communities, when you now start seeing development coming in, when you now start seeing lots of, it has a way of making them own the process and bringing about that sense of ownership. So that is actually what we have advocated as well in the document. There must be that synergy, there must be that partnership, that when that is done, it will go a long way to improve the situation that we have today.
Talking about the application of AI in the world of work, which seems to be the future, can you tell us what is the role that Pengassan is playing towards ensuring that its members actually upskill and are in line with global best practice?
Yes, so when we had a summit in Abuja, Sharon, so all in Pengassan, we operate in over 160 companies in Nigeria. So all the branch chairmen, they were all in the summit. They all took note of lots of the conversations we've had, and we are going to drive it further. This communique is also going to be shared with all our branch chairmen, so it will cascade down from the branch chairman. They will send it to their chapter chairman, and to be shared to the Congress. So that cascading is going to be done right away. So with that, they will not know, because we also have responsibility on our own. There is always this fear that, when AI comes, AI is going to take over our jobs. But we must be prepared, because I truly don't believe that AI will be able to take over jobs in the oil and gas industry. But AI will enhance the optimization of job functions in the oil and gas industry. And part of the provisions that we have also written there, apart from the fact that we need to upskill, we need to reskill, that we have taken data, those skill gaps will be covered. And as Pengassan, we are going to drive the various management to get that done, so that we too will be prepared in terms of hands-on and the skills that we have. So we'll be prepared. But beyond the skill as well, the application of AI on other areas is also very key. Like if you see the document that we shared, we also wrote that today we are talking about cross-border smuggling of petroleum products, most especially the PMS. That trucks are leaving droves, in droves outside the shores of Nigeria, because the cost of PMS outside Nigeria is much more, or the price of PMS is much more higher than what we have in Nigeria. So they are living in droves. But we have advocated in the summit that this can be curbed by the use of artificial intelligence. This can be curbed by the use of technology today, because today we live in an era of blockchain technology, we live in an era of open AI, we live in an era when nanotechnology, where you can actually apply technology to solve lots of world problems. And this is actually what we want the players in the oil and gas industry to imbibe.
You're also the president of the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria. Can you bring us up to speed on what the conversation is as regards the consequential adjustment as a result of the increase in the new national minimum wage? What are your expectations? What would be your message to various stakeholders?
Yes, so in terms of consequential adjustment, if you follow the conversation, I think just last week or thereabout, so the committee that is working on consequential adjustment has been constituted by the head of service of the Federation. So as we speak now, they are currently meeting, so we are expecting them to round up all the functions very soon and come up with what the expected consequential adjustment would be. And from what we are hearing, the government wants to backdate it to June. But we said that the last minimum wage expired in April 19th or thereabout. So, and we were promised during the May Day address by the Minister of State for Labor and Employment that on behalf of the federal government, that the implementation of the minimum wage is going to be May 1, which was from that May Day. So we want them to start the implementation from May Day and not from July, when the Minimum Wage Act was passed. So we are looking forward to the conclusion of the consequential adjustment for it to be applied to federal workers, because with that document we will also engage our respective state councils In fact, we don't really have much problem with federal in terms of the application of consequential adjustment. Where we have majority of the problems is actually the state councils, but we will try and give them the necessary technical support so that they will come up with the right consequential adjustment so that our workers will be better off for it.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Sharon.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.